I'll go as young as a kindergartner who on the playground gets mad and says, I'm going to blow this school up, or I'm going to get a gun and shoot you. Right. It's like, we have to address that. And so, you don't overreact, but you can't ignore it. So we do what's called, we do threat assessments, and that can involve just at the school level, just a school team, just to find out, really you want to get to, okay, why did they say this? Right. Was this just a flippant comment?
What's going on?
Are they repeating what they see on TV?
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us again today. And we haven't done a pop-up Pulse podcast.
Yeah, it's been a bit.
It's been a bit. I'm really glad that we're doing this. I mean, to refresh your memory as a listener or as a viewer, we're just checking the pulse of what's happening in West Ada. And something very cool happened this week at one of our board meetings. On the October 28th board meeting, we have actually gotten a grant and have a new SRO coming. So to talk about that, we have a couple of great guests to talk about a topic that I don't necessarily want to talk about, but we need to talk about it. Safety in schools, and it's a couple of great guests, Katie. Yeah,
it is. Yeah, we have Geoff Stands. He's our West Ada School District Director of Safety and Behavior, and he kind of oversees all things for every school in the district, and then he's like the liaison with all the agencies. And so we have Sergeant Morgan Carter as well from the Meridian Police Department. He's the South Team Supervisor, kind of overseeing the SROs in our schools, and they just really bring a great perspective and a great depth of knowledge on how to keep our kids safe.
It's really cool. Well, and as Katie always says, I mean, she and I are both parents in the district. I am really glad that we have these professionals here to talk about these things. And so anyway, school safety, we're so glad you're here. Let's get to the conversation.
All right, well, we are chatting today with Geoff Stands. He's our Director of Safety and Behavior here for West Ada School District, and Sergeant Morgan Carter. He's the South Team Supervisor for Meridian Police Department. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Yeah, so great to have you both here. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Yeah, there's a lot that folks want to know about safety and that kind of thing in our schools. It's always a hot topic. Ken and I are both parents. I have 3 kids in our schools. Yeah. Let us know. Tell us all the things that we're doing to keep our kids safe. I mean, we know the things about hall check and stuff like that, but why don't we start a little bit with some background on you two and what you do to help our families out?
Sure. Yeah. Want to tell my history of...
Yeah. I mean, 28 years in West Ada, Geoff. I mean, not your first day, man. Can you just run us through 30,000 foot level,
32 years total in this profession. Started out as an elementary teacher in Boise. I taught 6th graders.
Ooh, bless you.
Did that. And then migrated over to...
I love middle schoolers, man. Come on.
I migrated over to the West Ada School District and quickly got whisked into secondary administration. So my pathway is a little different than most. Yeah. So elementary teacher into high school administration. So I was an assistant principal at Meridian High, 5 years, 4 years principal at Eagle Academy, and then 10 years principal at Meridian High School.
And now bless you.
Yeah, and I'm in my ninth year here at central office. The whole safety piece has been, I would say, front and center in my career. Early on, I'll go back to April 20th, 1999. That was the Columbine shooting, and I was a young assistant principal at Meridian High School at the time. And I often tell my experience with that when I do trainings, and the point is, like, it was completely foreign to us.
Out of the
like
blue.
We never thought like something like that could ever happen, and we just weren't ready for it. Right. And that was 1999. So fast forward, we know that the world we live in is dangerous, and there are bad people out there. And so, we know that we have to create a safe place. We don't, for our kids and our staff, and we don't dwell on it. We don't want people to, when they come to school, I wonder if this is the day something, bad is going to happen. So we just have to make safety a priority. And so anyway, that I dealt with that early on in my career, and it has never left me. Yeah. It's always on my mind whenever I would go to school as a principal, certainly, that these kids are under my care, and you realize too that it's a team of people, and that's why we have such great relationships, partnerships with with law enforcement, because it takes all of us, and
Sure.
I could go on and on with this, but
Sure.
there's the reactionary piece where we train people to respond, but then there's things that we do behind the scenes that people probably aren't aware of.
Totally
You're
get it.
proactive all day long, every day. I mean,
You hope so, yeah.
yeah. And this position you're in now has been for the last 2 years. And I think that really shows kind of the direction the district's headed and how serious and how committed we are to keeping our students safe.
Yes.
And that's your primary responsibility. So I appreciate that as a parent.
Yeah, love that you're doing that. Yeah. Well, and Sergeant Carter, for you, I mean, you've been in law enforcement for 16 years or so.
Correct.
Give us your story. How did you get involved with law enforcement? Where did all that come from?
Well, there were two things that I wanted to do growing up, right? One was I wanted to be in construction, and I wanted to be a police officer, right? Specifically a homicide detective is what I wanted to. Still waiting to achieve that. But my Army recruiter and I, my senior year, didn't see eye to eye, so I did not go into the military. Instead, I fell back into construction. I did pretty well at it, building $1 million homes in San Francisco, Napa Valley. Started my own company. Eventually, we decided to flee California, come to Idaho.
I've never heard of that.
Right?
You're the only one, man. Come on.
So in late 06, we moved, and we know what happened in 07, 08. So I lost everything.
Oh, gosh.
Had to go back to California to put food on the table, and then said, maybe it's time to follow my other passion, which was law enforcement. So luckily, I was able to hire on with Kane County Sheriff's Office. Worked about 4.5 years there, and then came to Meridian. And while I've been in law enforcement, drug addiction, canine, I had a drug canine for a couple of years, drug interdiction, DUI. When I came to Meridian, I was one of our first DUI team members full-time, which was a passion for me. I love the impairment factor, taking impaired people off the road, especially when it comes to alcohol or drugs.
Don't even get me started on that, but thank you.
Been very fortunate to be a training officer, among other things too. Crisis negotiator, I've been involved in that. But when I began to promote, I always thought maybe I could be an SRO. I never was an actual SRO, so I was never assigned to a school or anything. That's not what we do as supervisors now. But I did work 11 months as a corporal under the team, or on the team. I got to meet Geoff then. Then I promoted to sergeant, went out to the road for about 18 months. There was an opening back with a sergeant for the SROs, and I came back to this. I've been here about 18 months now.
Okay.
So is that your title, South Team Supervisor? So does that, I assume you serve you work with all the SROs in the district, not just here in the South.
We do. Earlier in the year, we actually promoted another sergeant because this team was so large. We also opened up a North station, Meridian PD North. So that's why we had that break.
Okay.
We have the North and the
and
South.
that's the one out by Owyhee, right?
Correct.
Yeah, that's
north.
a beautiful station.
It is.
That's cool. Well, the reason we're here, Geoff, so earlier this week, you actually presented to the Board of Trustees. We received a grant. Can you walk us through? That's pretty cool stuff, and we'll link that board meeting in our show notes. But just give us what went down this week.
Well, just going back, this happened really fast. It was in mid-July that we received notification that the Idaho Department of Education was opening this grant for school districts to apply for an SRO. And it was a really short window. I want to say like a month turnaround. So we had to get after it. And, and so, because I work with the SROs, I know where the needs are. There was no question that we could use more, definitely.
Everywhere.
But we knew we had a pretty good shot at putting one in the north there just because of the square miles that officers have to cover there to respond and go to interview kids and those things. So we applied. I had a committee with Ada County Sheriff Officer who assists me with that. That's Sergeant Craig Durrell. And we got it turned in pretty quick. And we were awarded the grant not too long ago. About a month ago, we received official notice. And so Ada County Sheriff is now starting the process to identify, who can be an SRO. There's an internal process where for the hiring, but by January 7th, 2025, so just in a couple months, we'll have a full-time SRO out there.
That's so cool.
good.
So,
I think it's important for people to understand too, and maybe folks don't, that because we cover such a large geographic area as a district, we work with multiple agencies. So it's not like if something happened in the north where it's Ada County sheriffs are serving as like Eagle PD and they're a smaller department. It's not like we don't additionally have help from Meridian Police Department to back up and Boise Police and Garden City, right? We all work together for needs like that, correct?
Oh, absolutely. And if you look at all of our safety procedures, that is all vetted, has been vetted through all local police agencies. I'm talking of the Idaho Standard Command Response for Schools.
Sure.
But I meet regularly with the SRO supervisor, so that's Boise PD, Meridian, and Ada County Sheriff, and we're always coordinating and just making sure we have consistency among our schools, because you have different police officers that are working out there, and again, I can't stress enough how important it is to have that relationship with our law enforcement community and the partnership that we have. So.
Well, and for you, Sergeant Carter, I mean, what's the relationship look like from your perspective? And again, we're talking several different departments, but for Meridian Police specifically, what's the relationship like working with? I know working with Geoff's probably tough, man. But working with West Ada, what's that like?
Well, just to go over kind of where we stand in Meridian PD, we have our 2 sergeants, and then we have 2 corporals on the team, and then we have 6 officers apiece, or 8 officers apiece. Right now, the North team, we do have an SRO that's out on light duty for the rest of the year.
Okay.
So I've got 8 SROs under me, and the North team has 7 under them, so a total of 20 altogether, right? So a lot of officers, right? A lot of moving parts within that. We have 30 plus schools within West Ada. We also have another 15 plus schools within our city limits that we also want to try to help out as much as we can, be it the command responses or anything we can do for them to help them out, right? So there's a lot going on during the day. I always said when I was on patrol, besides the 1 or 2 big calls, it's a lot of work on the SRO team. I'm dealing with Geoff. Geoff is great. There's no issues there.
I'm glad you got that in there. I didn't want to hurt his feelings.
But all of our principals, our parents, our teachers, our staff, everything, right? And then each SRO deals with. We tell them their schools are a city, right? Being an officer that's in charge of his area, that's his own city, they should know everything that's going on or want to know everything that's going on within their area. And it's kind of the same for our SROs. I want to know with everything that's going on within my school, but not just in my school, just surrounding my school as well.
Sure.
That's important.
Sure.
Well, in the 2 years that I've been with the district, I've really come to realize the huge job the SROs have. I think erroneously a lot of people might look and they're security officers at the school, and that is so not it. Like, can you speak to some of the tasks like on a daily basis the SROs deal with? I mean, they're building relationships with kids and helping families, and like you said, kind of managing their own little city.
Sure. Well, I mean, just speaking of today, right now we have 2 in training in Boise, and they're actually learning more geolocation when it comes to tracking down. We had an incident earlier this year, and we can talk about that a little bit later, but where we we got involved with social media, TikTok, to where we found locations of events or issues that would concern law enforcement. So we have 2 SROs in that class today. We have another at his school teaching all day with their health administration, teaching students. We have another SRO that's teaching a half a day today on social media, bullying, vaping, whether it's traffic control out in front of their school, bus issues, crosswalk safety at our elementary schools. It's a busy day.
Yeah, it's a multifaceted job for sure.
Very much so.
Well, and Geoff, you got to bring you in particular have to bring a whole bunch of different people together. I would think, whether that's counselors or teachers, and obviously the police departments. What does that relationship look like? How do you bring those disparate people together to make sure that everyone's safe? What does that look like?
Yeah, so from my standpoint, I have regular trainings with, like, let's say the secondary administrators, the assistant principals.
Sure.
And they're kind of I'm going to say they're the resident experts on all things safety and behavior within their schools. So, I'm training and working closely with those individuals as well as with the elementary principals, and then they're going back into their buildings and taking that knowledge and sharing it with the staff. They work in an elementary school very closely with their school counselor. If it's a big high school, it's their admin team, it's the principal, it's the assistant principals. But, everybody in a school has a relationship with kids, or they should.
Sure.
So probably, and I can't stress this enough, whether it's school safety or academic performance, anything, we want all of our employees to know their kids.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And when you know your kids, you have a greater chance of identifying when there's a problem.
Right.
And
Makes sense.
if we can intervene early on, then we can help kids. So again, I'm doing at least on the safety side, the training on the reactive part where we move people to safety, whether it's for weather or outside threats.
Right.
But that's just one piece of it. But really, the big critical piece is just really knowing our kids and hopefully having them be comfortable to report things, because they're the ones that see and hear things.
Oh,
Yeah.
sure.
I'm not.
They're the eyes and ears.
I mean,
sure. Yeah.
I'm not an internet guy.
Yeah.
I'm not on social media, but but the kids are.
Oh, sure.
Right.
And Sergeant Carter alluded to this just a little bit ago, but there are a lot of things that come up through social media.
Oh.
And many times they're the most disruptive. And so our kids see it. And I'm proud to say in most instances, they're the ones who report it.
Yeah.
And then, of course, that creates a chain of events as well. But anyway, it's a lot of training. I think that's what you asked first. How do you bring it all together?
Right.
It takes time. It takes it's a lot of people.
Communication,
but
I'm sure, all the things, right?
Coordinating. But at the end of the day, we have to know our kids really well, establish that relationship with them, and
and that's the parent role, right? I mean,
Right.
parents are involved too. Yeah.
Yeah.
We've had a lot of issues where students have come because the SRO has fostered that relationship with the child or the
Right.
student, where they've come to them first before a counselor. And once again, we want our kids to be comfortable, right? Wherever you go, where it's ever comfortable, make sure you go to them.
Yeah.
And we've had a lot of experiences where SROs have been that focal point where they've reached out to them first, and then we can bring it forward to help them.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yeah.
Makes sense.
And we have to rely on that training, right? That's why you train, so that when there's an emergency, you automatically know how to act without having to think about it. And so as parents and community members, we see the lockdown drills and hall checks and, all that kind of stuff, evacuations. But there's a lot going on behind the scenes. Like you said, you're coordinating efforts and you're managing threat assessment, things like that, that's constantly going on between the district and all the different departments. What are some of those things, just to kind of set some parents at ease? Like, I know recently we had a bulletin that was put out in a neighboring area and departments and things like that people shared that was supposed to be kind of internal. How do we set parents at ease with that kind of thing?
I can speak to the threat assessment piece. That's probably the part most people don't know. But if I could go back in time, maybe to when we were kids, on the playground, it was common for someone to say, if they got mad, well, I'm gonna kill you.
Right.
My sister probably said that to me 100 times.
My sister's never said that to me, Geoff. Come on.
Most likely an innocuous comment that you never put anything into. But again, the world we live in,
Right.
we take everything that is said seriously. So now, let's say you have, I'll go as young as a kindergartner who on the playground gets mad and says, I'm going to blow this school up, or I'm going to get a gun and shoot you.
Right.
It's like, we have to address that. And so, you don't overreact, but you can't ignore it. So we do what's called, we do threat assessments, and that can involve just at the school level, just a school team, just to find out, really you want to get to, okay, why did they say this? Right. Was this just a flippant comment?
What's going on?
Are they repeating what they see on TV? Or, as we get older and we should have a better understanding of what our words mean. Now when we're saying things like that, oh, I'm going to shoot you or I'm going to kill you and I'm 15, 16,
It's a different thing.
Now that threat assessment might involve our law enforcement partners to sit in with us to really look into why is this student saying this, and do we see patterns of behavior? There's just a lot that goes into that. Ultimately, if there is a student in crisis who is contemplating or thinking about hurting themselves or others, we want to intervene.
Of course.
We don't want it to be, after the fact, I would often see that student sitting by himself, and he always seemed to be, sometimes I would hear him say things, but I never, put much stock into that. Well, again, those days are gone. We have to look into these things and make sure that the child is okay, and that involves their parents as well. It's a team effort. But yeah, that happens behind the scenes that I think probably the community does not know.
I'm sure. Well, but then, okay, from your perspective, Sergeant Carter, when you get a threat assessment, how do you investigate that? I mean, what does that look like? Because there's the behind the scenes stuff, but then at some point, you all get involved. How do you investigate that? What are the steps that you all take?
Well, if I could just put it bluntly, it's if we put it on a scale of 1 to 10, right, with 1 being something that's not too concerning, be it like a kindergartner or a third grader.
Sure.
Now, we know we've had incidents throughout the country where a third grader has brought harm to a school, right? So we very much look into it and take it very serious, right? But those are incidents that we can quickly rule out, with a phone call, a quick home visit, or something like that. Where if it's more serious, right, then we're probably bringing on more than just the SRO team. We might get detectives involved. We might get some patrol officers involved as well. We might get other jurisdictions involved to maybe make that home visit if need be.
Sure.
Obviously, we want to reach out to parents. We want to have these conversations. We want to be able to go into the house and see if there are threats, if there are weapons, if there is anything like that. We try to get as much information as possible to make the best decision.
Makes sense.
And parents are generally well-meaning, right? Like I like to assume
for the most part,
best intentions for people. But a lot of times I know, like in my community, we can really maybe exacerbate problems with social media and
Sure.
spinning things out of control that probably ultimately makes both of your jobs harder. Right.
Correct.
And so if we could, not that we have a magic wand and we could control, but if I could tell my peers, my fellow parents, like, hey, let's calm down and know that the experts, the professionals, those in the know are working really hard, and maybe just take a beat to say it's in good hands.
Sure.
Right. Would that be the ultimate thing? Because when things get spread all over the internet, misinformation goes everywhere. And so it's a vicious game of telephone, if you will.
Yeah. It's common now that I want to say monthly, if not more frequently than that. We are receiving some sort of threat online. Usually, it's there's no specific place mentioned, but kids or whoever get a hold of it, and it just takes life, and it could start abroad, in another country.
Yeah.
Or it can start locally, but people see it, and it's like this. It just explodes, and people react to it, and of course we're all working on it to quickly show that this is nothing, and we need to just get to school and move forward.
Yeah, I'll give you an incident we had recently. The SRO team, the command, we were all in Boise at an SRO command class.
Oh, okay.
And I get a late phone call from one of our SROs telling me about this threat that we have at one of our schools. But I also had Ada County and Boise officers reach out to me to let me know that they had heard this as well. So I call my officer, I speak with him. Well, he starts running this down. I'm headed back to the station at this point. Reach out to detectives. They get the ball rolling too. Within about 2-3 hours, we had tracked down the original threat, which was in another state. It had already been investigated.
Right.
Well done by everyone involved. And that's exactly what it's set up for.
Yeah.
Right.
So something that would have made our next day at school that much harder turned out to be.
And that's where these guys are the experts, because
not your first day.
We'll receive that information, and it's usually, I'll call Sergeant Carter and say, okay, here's this. And they just attack it and get to the bottom of it,
done.
because while they're investigating it, it's still swirling out there.
Yeah.
And you just know it's like, if we don't get this resolved quickly, it's just going to disrupt things.
Well, and to Katie's point, it becomes a bad game of telephone, right?
Yeah.
And so what is the appropriate route? So, right, it's like you want to see-tell now, right? We have that app. It's available on our website. I don't know how often people use that. But what is, say I'm a mom, I'm taking my kid to school, I hear two kids beefing and one says, I'm going to shoot you. Let the principal know. What's the order of operations?
Yeah, I mean, if I was the mother, I would definitely say let school staff know, you know, who said it. If you can give any details, that's great, because we just had a similar case like this. And I did get a CTEL Now anonymous tip today as well, and that's been pushed off to the appropriate school. So that does come across quite often, which is good. But in that situation now the schools know. Now we can start going back through surveillance cameras and tracking down who these students are. It's incredible. My SROs, it's incredible to see. We will get kids with a beer run, right, on a Saturday night, right? And we will take that report, meaning Meridian PD will take the report, and that will just be pushed out to the SROs and go, hey, do you guys recognize any of these kids? Without a doubt, our SROs know these kids. Right. So it's already been solved like that. We'll take it from there and go do follow-up. So them being in the schools and them having that relationship with the school, with the students, just pays off dividends.
So one of the coolest things I heard at the board meeting earlier this week is one of the SROs. I think this SRO actually coaches on the football team and the wrestling team. Sergeant Carter, who makes a good SRO? What does that look like? How do they? What's the officer that can get in there and get to know these kids? Who does that well?
Well, I think in years past, it's always been maybe that officer that's in the twilight of his career, right? They've been a patrol officer for a while. Maybe they've gone upstairs to detectives or done something else, canine, and they just want to maybe ease back. They want to work days. They want to have a normal shift. That was kind of the old mentality of the SRO, which is good because those SROs brought a lot of experience to the SRO team, right? The last couple of years, our last few that we've brought onto the team, they've been relatively new, inexperienced cops, right? Remember, they're all police officers. But with less than 5 years on, but they bring, because they're so young, they bring their knowledge of social media, right?
Which is huge.
Absolutely. One of them actually worked for juvenile probation and parole, so she brings that along with her as well. So we're getting this influx of a lot of younger officers, which is really good. Because we have to be able to relate to the officers, not that the older or the students, not that the older ones can't,
mix.
Right? But it's a mix. Yeah, but it's a lot of work, right?
Oh, I can't imagine.
Sometimes on patrol, we can go out there and just handle calls for service when they come up. But as an SRO, you can't just sit in your office. You have to be proactive within your school. And a lot of our SROs have multiple schools. So they're dividing their time during the day to go to these other schools. So once again, it's like your own community, and you have to very much be a part of it.
And the relationships are good. Like I'm in and out of the schools a lot in my role, and seeing the students like, hey, what's up?
Right.
What's up, Carter? How you doing? That kind of thing. It's just
that's a thing.
They're
that's
kind of like a beloved
thing.
character on campus, and I think that's good. It's a safe place. I know my own kids have had to talk to the SRO before, and it's not a gotcha, get you in trouble kind of thing.
Right.
It's we're here to help you navigate this life. Parents, they're not going to try to arrest you and get you out of you're there to help.
Right.
Yeah.
So
that's really cool.
Yeah. It's a good thing.
And I want to give our taxpayers a little love as well. I mean, that last levy, the supplemental levy we passed, Geoff, that funded some of our SROs. Why is that important? Can you expound on that a little bit? Why is it important for us to know as taxpayers, as members of the community, like here's what our SROs are doing? Why is that important?
Yeah. Well, I would say talk to districts where they don't have SROs and where they've had to, but they didn't get the funding for them, and that has happened in some of our close areas here. I experienced even one year myself as a principal when we didn't have the funds. This goes back over 20 years ago, but I was in an alternative high school and lost my SRO for a year.
And Columbine had already happened to your earlier point.
Yeah. It's like taking a really good teacher out of your building and saying, we're not offering whatever class you want to put in there. We're not offering this anymore. And you take them out. It's like they're a part of your school. They're part of your system. They've created relationships with your community. And I just can't stress enough how important it is to I know people want SROs there for the protection because I think that's what that's what most people see. But and they are there for that. Certainly, they're trained for that. But the impact they're making on kids.
I've seen it. I've seen it at basketball games. I've seen it at football games and in class. And
intervening with kids before maybe they're making some really poor decisions. Maybe they've made some bad decisions. They're heading down a certain road, but an SRO who is real savvy about how things work on the street and those kinds of things can sit them down and help steer them in another direction. And anyway, it's invaluable. You'd have to just go into any school where we have them, and you would just see really their place in a school. They're irreplaceable. And again, I had a year where I didn't have. I had a full-time one, and then I went a year without one.
Yeah.
And even though I could call dispatch, and they would send someone over, they were like 5 minutes away or less. But the fact is, I didn't have that. They were a teammate of mine.
Yeah.
Right.
And we would team up and work with kids. I lost my teammate. And so.
Well, and they're another caring adult for the kids.
Yeah,
the kids saw them
exactly.
every day
With
and
a
know that they're
different
there.
perspective.
Yeah.
Well, once again, unfortunately, we do have officers that go into our students' homes and arrest mom and dad for whatever reason, right? Or they're there for other reasons to investigate crimes. And so those students automatically look at law enforcement in a different light. Right. So our SROs hope to bridge that gap, bring them back to going, okay, they're a good person. Okay, they're a friend, a mentor.
Right.
Here to help.
I've got a relationship.
Right.
Yeah. Well, and this might be a question. I don't know if this is for you, Geoff, maybe for either one of you, but it's not practical, I don't think, to have an SRO in every single school. Can either one of you talk to that a little bit about, like, it'd be great to have them in every school, but there is a monetary aspect to that. There's all kinds of different things. Maybe, Geoff, would you mind starting on that and just tell us why?
How do you determine?
Yeah. So again, that's in cooperation with the law enforcement agency. So you look at, well, first and foremost, if you have a big secondary school, that's an automatic. I mean, you're going to have an SRO there. That's
no-brainer.
That's your that's where you start from, and then from there you're just looking at where are the calls coming from? Calls being, referrals, whether they're abuse situations, crimes in the community. So if I have, high schools being the highest where we need an SRO, elementary probably being the lowest, just because it's you just don't have as many kids.
Right.
However, if you're in a community where they do need police presence, they do need the follow-up, then that's where you're going to, hopefully put an SRO presence there. But yeah, I know ideally people want an SRO in every school.
Right.
And Sergeant Carter he can agree or disagree. I think he'll agree. There are not enough bodies to even put an SRO at every school. I mean, I know that Meridian PD is blessed to, I think, cover most of their bases for their whole department.
Sure,
but that is not the case nationally. So all you have to do is look at those stats, and it's like where are the priorities? And again, we would love to have one at every school, but you would also have SROs in schools where, other than just creating relationships and being there's not a presence. They're not having to follow up with any referrals and such. So
Well, Sergeant Carter, from your perspective, well, I assume logistics is a thing, though. How do you handle logistics then? If I'm an SRO and I'm trying to handle 2 or 3 different schools, what does that look like?
It means you can't be at the other one.
Right? Yeah.
No, I mean, for us, obviously, we have to do law enforcement related training too every year, right? So that pulls them out of school. We are training in other ways, like the 2 in Boise right now. They're not in their schools for the next 3 days. People get sick. People get injured. People go on vacation.
People are human beings.
People are human beings, very much so. And then, as Geoff said, when we investigate these referrals that deal with our students, be it an elementary level, that SRO is going to go out and do all the follow-up on that because it's his student. He has that relationship with them. So it is tough. And that's a fine line that we kind of jump through hoops a little bit, move some people around, make sure us as a sergeant or corporals are filling in at some of those schools where people are gone. But
But you're constantly navigating that, I assume.
Yes.
Yeah.
So if funding wasn't an issue, like if our neighbors and friends just wanted to vote for all the supplemental levies to pay for SROs, we could potentially find bodies to hire. I mean, in a perfect world.
Sure.
I don't know.
Well, one of the things I want to touch on too, and I'm totally shifting gears, guys, but we've got the new cell phone policy here in West Ada. I've heard plenty. I was listening to a different podcast. I can't even remember who I was listening to, but I heard another person making the comment, "Hey, look, I want my kid to have a cell phone in case, heaven forbid, there's an active shooter or there's something horrible going on. I want my kid to have a cell phone." Well, I'm talking as a parent. I'm not talking as a West Ada employee or anything. I want my kid, my daughter's a senior over at Mountain View. I want my kid to be quiet and listening and figuring out what to do to get out of a horrible situation. How do you react to that?
Yeah, alert and oriented, right?
I mean, what does that look like in your world?
Well, as a parent, I would agree. I want them paying attention, right? I support West Ada's policy on the cell phone. This year, I think they're making steps to make kids more accountable within the classroom, right? Paying attention, right?
Which is huge.
We know that the cell phone is very much a distraction.
100%.
Yeah, without a doubt. But
yeah. Can you add anything, Geoff? And where do you come down on that side of the argument, or what I'm just talking about here?
Well, I'm the old stodgy guy here. I
thought that was me, man. Hold on.
No, I've been in education long enough to see when the phones came in. I've seen the pendulum swing. But in terms of, parents wanting access to their kids, in a real situation, it only adds confusion.
Yeah.
It only adds confusion, misinformation. And so, heaven forbid we're ever in a serious situation, but if we were, communications on law enforcement and the West Ada side will be broadcasting the necessary information. Parents won't even be allowed within a perimeter coming to an area. And so this idea that you are going to talk with your child through an event and then go to the school, you're only going to be in the way of first responders
who are trying to get the job done.
But
and protect our kids.
But the phones don't even get me started. They're just a distraction. They don't have any purpose in the classroom. And if you really need to get hold of your child, you can. You call the front office like we did, 20 years ago. Back in the day.
Back in the day, as the kids say. Yeah.
I grew up in a law enforcement military household, so it was head on a swivel. I mean, your eyes out. You don't be distracted, right? So I think if we could teach more people that, so that they know and know that there are more caring adults in the schools, and that you guys are extremely professional and well prepared, and like you said, heaven forbid, but I feel pretty good about my kids going to school every day. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, okay. Before we end up, I want to wrap up. We've had you guys here for a while. So, but how do we get better? What are you all doing to be proactive? And Sergeant Carter, what are you doing to be proactive and think about what might be next? What does that look like in your world?
Well, if I said continued training, that would probably be at the top of the list. And not only do we train within Meridian PD, but also with Nampa, Boise, Ada County, surrounding agencies within the Valley. We have training every August where we've been able to have most agencies, a lot of smaller agencies as well, come and get that same training. So that's important, without a doubt. And having a good partner as well.
Yeah.
Good partnership.
Jeff, from your perspective, how do we get better? How do we keep improving?
The training is the same. I agree. You're always getting new people that come through.
Right.
So you can never stop training. You want to develop your systems and improve them so that it's not person dependent. So that that training is fluid. And then the second thing is, I think for us getting better, you look at your facilities. That's probably the other big part that I didn't discuss here. But how do we make our facilities more secure? Because we have newer buildings, but we also have older buildings.
Sure.
Well, when they built those older buildings, different world at that time.
Yeah. Right.
And so we're always looking at, okay, how can we make our buildings more secure? If you've been in West Ada for the last few years, you know that we have access control. You don't just go walk
in the school.
Just don't walk in the school anymore. You have to, if you're a parent, you get buzzed in. And then taking that out from the school, looking at, do we need to make our schools even more difficult to enter? Because you can go walking onto campus, but there's discussion about, do we want barriers around the entire campus so that it forces visitors to come straight to the front door, and that is your only option? I mean, those are the things that we have discussions about, that we look at. So to summarize it, to get better, I think you never just sit and say, well, we've arrived. No,
there's no finish line, right?
Yeah, there's always there are always things to look at within your schools, within your processes. How can we be more efficient? How can we be more secure?
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you for your time, and thank you for the effort. Like, sincerely, as a parent, this is where I get choked up. Thank you. Thank you for keeping our schools safe, and the proactive work you do, and for training our kids.
Well, I don't see this conversation ending. To your point, I think we're going to keep on having this conversation. But we really appreciate you guys coming on today, and as Katie said, thank you. Thank you is not adequate, but we appreciate that we have professionals like you all doing what you do. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, again, this is not a conversation that I necessarily want to have, but it's a necessary conversation. I'm so glad that we were joined by Sergeant Carter and Geoff today.
You have to have that training. I mean, that training, this is why our first responders train, and they're helping our kids train so that we know what to do in the event of an emergency. And it's imperative that we know this. So
well, and I think you're right, and I think it's imperative that we have this conversation as viewers and as parents and as members of the West Ada community. Let's talk. Let's really talk about this stuff, because it's not going anywhere, and we need to keep having the conversations. To that end, I want to ask this question today. What is your top concern when it comes to school safety? Email us. Let's have the conversation on social media. But what's your top concern out there? I know that I hope that you gleaned some tidbits today and got to put some faces to who it is that's protecting our children. But we want to hear from you all. What's your top concern? And we're just glad that you're here. And the podcast train rolls on as well. We got another one coming up.
This is a fun little in-between Pulse podcast that we get to do here. And coming up in our next podcast that will drop, we have
the regularly scheduled podcast.
That's fun to say, huh? We have Patricia Vandenberg, and she's our math coordinator, and she oversees a lot of professional development and professional learning days and stuff like that. So that will be a great conversation as well.
Yeah. Well, thanks for being here today. And listen, again, this is not a conversation that's going to end. I see this as something we need to talk about early and often, and we need to be prepared. And again, I'm so glad that we have professionals who are thinking about these things.
Yeah, we're very fortunate that we have this, because a lot of tiny, small districts don't have these resources. So we're blessed.
Yeah. Well, thanks for being here, and we will see you again real soon. Thank you.